You're joining the Loudr Lawyer Network, the podcast where we sit down with the law firm owners, attorneys, and visionaries that are making the most noise in the legal landscape nationwide to find out the secrets to their success. Other podcasts think they're getting loud, but we're getting louder. Let's get into it.
Welcome to the Loudr Lawyer Network, where we help attorneys scale to $1 million months through powerful strategies and connections and the human touch. My guest today is Chip Wagar. Chip Wagar. Chip, welcome to the show, man. Welcome to Loudr Lawyer.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
Hey, man, glad to have you. Glad to have you. You look about it just as cool as I do right now, man. How hot is it where you are right now?
Well, if you want to just go by air temperature, I think it's somewhere in the mid 90s. But if you put that heat index down, we're down here in New Orleans, man, it's about in triple digits.
Oh, triple digits, man. So we're riding. I'm in Los Angeles. We're riding right up there, man. It feels like inside my studio, it feels like it's triple digits. So I got the Dyson fan going, the above fan, and it's cooking. So, man, this is normally I kick this off. I'm going to kick it off and ask you, about how your journey. But man, you've been almost 40 decades in the field of law, and the stories. What's more compelling than even your resume is the stories. You have stories that are compelling. You've seen a lot in your almost 50 years in the business.
45,
man. So you have a lot to share. So take me back to where it all began before you ever became an attorney. Is being an attorney something you wanted to do right out the bat? And specifically, what led you down the road to malpractice?
Answer to your first question is yes. To Kill a Mockingbird is where it all began.
Wow.
I saw that when I was in, with Gregory Peck and Robert Duvall is actually in that movie, briefly, cameo appearance. But I saw that in my early teenage years, and that's what I wanted to be. And I never really deviated from that for the rest of the way. I went through college at George Washington University, and I briefly thought about going into government, maybe the State Department or the CIA or something like that because of
CIA.
Yeah,
a little CIA.
Yeah, that was in the 70s, so it was a little bit different back then.
Okay.
And it was interesting and maybe living or traveling abroad and so forth. But I didn't, and I went to law school down in New Orleans at Tulane and basically stayed here ever since. I started off with Exxon actually for a couple of years, and then I was doing offshore personal injury litigation for them, defending cases, offshore drilling companies, and that kind of thing.
For specifically Exxon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
And then I left Exxon and joined a private law firm. Did more of the same, mainly maritime stuff, got into some products liability and what have you, but again, pretty much all defense work. And by my 50s, I guess, after a couple of 2.5 decades or so, I kind of was burning out on it, actually. My heart was never really in it, in the sense that I did my professional best, of course, whenever I needed to. And I got a lot of trial experience. I've probably tried, I know it's more than 100 jury trials. It's probably less than 200, somewhere in there. I got a lot of trial experience, which is unusual nowadays. And about 20 years ago, in my law firm, an associate came to me and said, I have an aunt that, I think she may have experienced medical malpractice. Would you be interested in representing her? And I'd never done medical malpractice before, but I thought, yeah, that sounds interesting. I think, yeah, I can learn it, And I took the case and I got her a very nice settlement. And right away, I thought I knew what I was doing. And so, and when other lawyers find out you're doing it, because it's not a popular thing to do for reasons I'm sure we'll get into. Oh, I've got a case for it. Let me send them your way, you know. So I started doing some more cases, and I found out, no, you really don't know what you're doing. This is a very complex and tricky area of the law, and a lot of things about it. So I lost a few cases. And then I began to figure out how to do this, you know. And so it was a sort of a rough beginning, but I learned how to, you know, I learned from my mistakes, and now after 20 years, you know,
Yeah,
people think I'm pretty good at it now, you know.
Yeah, take me through those. Take me through those. You know, through those rough beginnings. You said you lost cases, and in losing, you actually learn a lot too. But what was your? You came from defense, doing defense, working with Exxon and helping out personal injuries and doing that at the firm, and then jumping into, like, you basically jumped in with both feet, no life raft or anything when you did the malpractice. From that victory you had with the settlement and stuff, is that when the downhill began to come? When did you find, how did the different things, because 40 years in the business, you've seen juries evolve, different laws evolve and things of that nature. So how did you deal with those losses?
Well, how did I deal with losses? I don't like to lose. And it's far more devastating when you're representing the plaintiff or the victim than it is for a large corporation, which, you know, basically licks its wounds and goes and fights again another day. For you know, a plaintiff in a medical malpractice case, or really in any personal injury case, you know, this is their one shot. And when it doesn't work out, you feel really, really bad for them. I feel bad for myself too, but I feel real bad for them. It's really tough to take, and it makes you motivated to stop and figure out as objectively as you can,
Right,
where I went wrong, what do I need to improve, and, you know, so forth. So you hit the nail on the head. Really, you learn more from your defeats, you know, than your victories. And I began to figure out some things that, you know, I thought, you know, personal injury, which malpractice is a niche within personal injury. Most people think PI litigation, you know, car accidents and slip and fall, trip and fall, that kind of thing. This is its own thing. And, you know, there's no rear end collisions in medical malpractice. It's a tough fight against well-financed opponents. Also, you find out sympathy doesn't get you very far in medical malpractice. It just doesn't, because there's a doctor in a white coat on the other side, and most people have a positive impression of doctors and so forth, which is, you know, normal. But you have to overcome that. You have to have the medicine. You have to have the evidence, and you have to be very careful about what cases you take. You know,
right.
So I learned all these things along the way. I learned about screening cases and being very careful what cases that you take and, you know, what you don't take. I learned about juror attitudes in medical malpractice and how different they were from what I was used to before. And I learned a lot about medicine, which is one of the things I love about this practice, because it's fascinating. It's just, not only is the law complex, and you really need to learn all the little tricks and all the little hidden traps and so on and so forth, but the medicine is just fascinating. You know, the different things that can happen, and whether something's a normal complication versus medical malpractice. It's just a fascinating thing.
How do you said something that was really interesting, learning all the little things, the traps and the tricks and things of that nature. When is a doctor held accountable for things? Because doctors make mistakes too. I mean, we're human, so there's going to be mistakes. And what have you found in going after some of these malpractice cases that maybe somewhat appalling to you, when, you know, when truth isn't told. I mean, I'm sure you've caught people telling stories that weren't true as well.
You know, doctors are human. They lie at the same rate as the general population does, particularly when their pride and their honor, as they perceive it, their prestige, how their peers view them,
Right.
on the line, and they've made a terrible mistake, and it's really cost somebody their life or their, you know, crippling injury and so forth. It's hard to accept that. You know, it's hard. You know, we all rationalize all the time in our lives. We all think we're better than we really are, you know, in truth.
Right.
And we don't like to admit when we've made a mistake, and particularly if it's really hurt somebody else. We find all kinds of rationalizations and justifications and so forth. And in medical malpractice, that's complicated because medicine's complicated. So, you know, most mistakes and we're not just talking about doctors here, nursing homes, hospitals,
Right.
medical institutions, nurses, and so on. Most of the time when mistakes are made in medicine, they can be fixed. You know, before you're discharged from the hospital, they
Right.
fix. You know, it's too bad they gave you the wrong medication at first, but it didn't cause any serious or permanent harm. So those kind of cases we can't take. I mean, yes, a mistake was made, but you know, I mean, the damages just aren't there. When you have to hire experts and do depositions and the cost and expense of all this, and I'm going to take a contingency fee out of it, you know, it's not worth it. So those cases go by the boards. You have to have another doctor who's willing to say, oh no, man, that doctor did something that no reasonable doctor would have done, or he did something that no reasonable doctor would have done under the same or similar circumstances. It's not just a mistake. It's, you know, and you have different categories, you know, like misdiagnosis. That's the number one category in medical malpractice. More than anything else, misdiagnosis causes more malpractice than anything else because they're treating you for something you don't have, and they're not treating you for something you do have.
Right.
And sometimes delays in diagnosis and treatment can be fatal, literally, or can cause serious and permanent injuries that last the rest of your life. So, you know, those are the kind of things as you go along, you learn to, again, screen out these cases that you'd like to take it, but, you know, just can't really work. And you get down to that few where someone's really been seriously injured or killed, and it's a result of something no reasonable doctor would have done under the same or similar circumstances.
Right. You said that the cases with medication are misdiagnosed that can be fixed. What happens to the cases where someone has been given medication and it's killed a loved one?
Yeah, that's malpractice. You know, I mean, you know, I've had, for example, some people have, you know, allergies to penicillin and penicillin type drug.
That's why I asked.
Yeah, no, I've had
that and aspirin. I had a situation where I was in the hospital, was given a form of aspirin, and started having bleeding because the particular medication came from aspirin. And you know, since I've been born, can't have no aspirin, and I had a reaction to it. So,
well, I'll give you an example. I had a case with a guy who was allergic to penicillin or any penicillin derivatives, amoxicillin, you name it, any of those cillins, he couldn't have it. It was on his chart. It was all over his chart. And he was in the emergency room for, I think, flu or something like that. And the doctor just blew through all those stop signs and gave him an IV and then discharged him with a prescription for a penicillin derivative drug. He nearly died. You know, I mean, he just breaks out in hives. His liver, you know, he just has a tremendous reaction. He did survive it. He's a diabetic now for the rest of his life and has other health problems. Okay, so that's malpractice. We won that case. We went to trial. We won that case. And I have another case where a woman she needs a CAT scan with contrast, and she's asked, all the
Come out the dye, right?
pardon
Contrast the dye that you
with
put in.
dye. Yes,
Yes.
so she's asked, questions like, are you allergic to shellfish? Have you ever had one of these before? Have you ever, had any reactions? They go through the whole thing. No, nothing. Now, there is a 1% or even less than 1% of the population that's allergic to this dye. Okay. And she was one of them. But they did everything, they asked all the right questions. And so they gave her the dye, and they were about to give her the CAT scan when she went into anaphylactic shock and a coma. Now, she also survived, but she was in a coma for 3 or 4 days, came out the other side, and so forth and so on. That's a complication. That all due care was taken. She wasn't misdiagnosed. It's just an unfortunate thing about her. Whereas the first case was, it was in the chart, don't do it, and he did it anyway. Just either didn't read it, didn't do it, or disregarded it, and that's unreasonable.
Right.
So that's a kind of an example of the difference. Not every mistake or not every bad outcome is malpractice, but malpractice is always a bad outcome.
Right. Medical malpractice is one of the most, as you said, difficult areas of law. Why did you choose that after having success in the thing? I know you said the burnout, but it's one of the most difficult fields to be in. But you've excelled in it the last 20 years, right?
I think, yes. I mean, we've had great success with it, no doubt about it. Why? Well, personal injury, car accidents and so forth, there's so much advertising nowadays. It's so competitive. And it's kind of repetitious, it's the same thing kind of over and over and over again. It's not that interesting to me. And I've gotten to a point in my career, I was already kind of burning out on what I had been doing. And it's just a fascinating field, medical malpractice. It's just so interesting. So that's one reason. Another reason is these injuries are catastrophic. That we handle, just catastrophic. Did you know the third leading cause of death in this country is medical malpractice? It's behind heart disease and cancer.
Wow, I had no idea. That's a fascinating stat.
Oh, the figures vary, but conservatively, something like about 450,000 people a year in the United States die of malpractice. And that's not counting crippling injuries, paralysis, brain damage, and all kinds of other
birth injuries, things of that nature, right?
Yeah. So it is, to put it in context, if you took all the gun deaths in the United States, suicide and homicide, that's about 50,000. And you took all the fatal car accidents, vehicular accidents, also about 50,000. And you put it together, medical malpractice kills easily 4 times as many as those.
Wow. That's a scary thought.
Tell me about it. Every time I have a medical procedure now, I'm just terrified.
I've spent the last month in and out of the hospital for various things, and by God's grace that I'm here, but I had no idea.
Yeah, here's another one. Just since you're in and out of the hospitals, you have about a 1 in 8 to 1 in 10. This is based on Medicare statistics by the federal government. About a 1 in 8 or 1 in 10 chance that while you're in that hospital, you will be injured by the hospital staff. Not for what you didn't, not a disease or an injury that you went there for. You will be independently injured.
Are you serious?
While you're in the hospital. Now, again, a lot of them, they'll fix it while you're there, but 1 in 8 chance.
I mean, I'm smiling, man, because it's when you have that nervous like feeling, you don't know what else to do. The first thing is like, I can't believe it. I can't. That's a scary stat.
It's much more common than people think it is.
Wow.
And it can cause catastrophic injuries and death as much as any other form of personal injury, really, and yet our society, instead of addressing, what's the cause of this, bad medicine, patient safety disregarded, and so forth. What we have done in this country is we've privileged the hospitals and the doctors by putting up barricades to recovery. Like in Louisiana and Texas and many other states, there's caps on damages. Like you have a medical malpractice case in which someone's paralyzed, catastrophic injury. And that case goes to trial in Philadelphia or Chicago. You might, I don't know what amount of damages I would accept to be paralyzed. It would be a big number, 20, 30 million. I don't even think I'd take that. But here in Louisiana, the most you can get for that is $500,000.
What?
That's it. In Texas, $250,000. Yeah.
The cap for being injured in a malpractice that wasn't your fault. That's the cap with what these health organizations.
That's right. And out of that cap of $500,000 comes my 40% contingency fee and expenses of litigation. Yeah. And that's to protect the doctors in Louisiana, supposedly from moving out of state and, heading for the exit doors. Meanwhile, Alabama, Florida, Arkansas, Georgia, none of those have any caps. And somehow they have doctors in the state and really good medical institutions like, Emory or University of Alabama at Birmingham Florida has several Mayo clinics in Jacksonville. Somehow they have doctors, but, they have no caps. But Louisiana, we have to have caps to, keep doctors from fleeing the state. It's so illogical and it's so cruel. When you see what I see, these are, most of my clients are middle class or even poor people, and they've been crippled or some, their father's dead and they're impoverished by it and so forth. Yeah, $500,000. That includes loss of income.
Wow.
$80,000 a year, and you're 36 years old, and now you can't work for the rest of your life. Nope, that's in the cap. Yeah.
Oh,
so
man, that's so heartbreaking,
isn't it? And guess who has the worst nursing homes in the country? Number 50. That would be us. Because there's no checks and balances. If you want to have really terrible patient safety and terrible medical care, Louisiana's the state you want to be in, because there's no checks and balances here, So this is when you talk about being a loud lawyer, that would be me, because I've been crusading. I spent a lot of time this year in the legislature trying to raise those caps and some of the other terrible things about our laws. Right. Limited success because, well, you know why.
Right.
What the Medical Society and the Hospital Association and the Nursing Home Lobby and all those people have going for them in the Louisiana legislature or any legislature. It's,
Yes.
So this is the wealthiest, most privileged profession. And I'm not saying they don't deserve it. They're doctors. They went to school. They put in a lot of time, and but they are the wealthiest group of profession.
No, absolutely.
And healthcare industry is the biggest sector of the economy of most states and of the United States.
Absolutely.
They're making money hand over fist. Okay.
Oh, man, that's the biggest. That's the biggest pool. I mean, they talk about having cures and things of that nature, but being sick means more money in your pocket. if you know what I mean.
If you've been in and out of hospitals, you've seen the bills.
Oh yeah. No,
and let me tell you something. Maybe you're going to a nonprofit hospital, right? A 501, what is it, 501c hospital, the nonprofits. Okay. Take a look sometimes, because those have to be published. Those are public record. Take a look at what the executive salaries of that hospital are. I'll tell you, the biggest one in Louisiana, the CEO's making $9 million a year in a nonprofit. And every one of the department heads is making between $1 and $3 million a year base salary in these nonprofits. Where does the money go?
Where does it go?
So these people are just surrounded with laws that cap damages and make it really hard to recover. And something needs to be done about it. And that's why I'm a loud lawyer.
Hey, I understand that. So with everything you just mentioned right now, you have a loved one that walks into your office. A loved one that walks into your office that's either had a loved one that they lost, or someone has been badly injured. What are some of the things? What's the first thing that an individual is seeking you? What do they want from you?
They want to make sure that it doesn't happen to somebody else. That's the number one reason. Because obviously you're not going to make a ton of money in Louisiana or Texas or the states that have these caps. Yeah, I mean, money talks, you know the saying. Yeah, no, the number one reason, they want justice. They want someone to take responsibility for what happened to them or their loved one. They want justice, and they want to make sure this doesn't happen to somebody else. Those are the number one and number two reasons that I hear all the time.
All right. Over the decades, you've seen medicine become safer. Has medicine become safer or more complicated?
No, I think it's become safer, and therefore there's less of an excuse when it injures or kills someone, because there's ways to prevent things from happening to patients that weren't around 20 years ago or 30 years ago. And so it's unacceptable that a known risk, as they will tell you, is still happening in 0.01% of cases, 1 in 10,000 cases, that used to be 1 in 100. And the best care you could get, it still happened.
Man, what you do, Chip, where you stand, coming from Exxon disasters to stepping into the medical malpractice is huge. Let me ask you this: compared to what you did with Exxon, I'm sure that you had catastrophic accidents that happened, where there was loss of life there too. And how do you, between the two, which is more heartbreaking? Where does the compassion? You seem to have compassion just flowing through. When I look at you, I see compassion and conviction flowing through, no matter what field that you're in. It's like you want to get up there and just scream and shake someone's head. You can just feel it in your in the way you state your responses. How do you deal with that?
When I was a young defense lawyer, and it was just Exxon. After a few years, I left and I was with a defense firm, that defended drilling contractors, boat companies, offshore companies, and so on and so forth. And I was young. I was in my 20s and early 30s. And I kind of intellectualized it all. I was figuring it out, why my client wasn't responsible. It was somebody else's fault, and so on and so forth. And all the legal issues, or it was my client's fault, but they shouldn't be paying, more than a certain amount of money for this injury, or the injury was exaggerated. It was kind of an intellectual mind game kind of thing. And as time went on, the cases got bigger. the injuries got more severe, or death, you know, I mean, people maimed and crippled and just awful injuries. And I remember thinking one particular case was a burn case. It was a product liability burn case. And I think this is where it really, you know, I started switching over. And I got a defense verdict at the end. I mean, this guy had been badly burned. I won't tell you parts of his body that were burned that you would never want burned, that you might rather die than have burned. And he was burned. And he was a nice guy. And after the trial, the jury came back 0, you know, no liability on my company. And even to this day, I can say, well, you know, it's fair enough. But I want to tell you, walking away from that, I did not feel good about it. You know, victory, you know, it was, I just didn't feel good about it. And that's kind of the beginning of it. As my life has gone on, you know, the tragedies and the heartbreak and the impact these terrible and catastrophic injuries have on people's lives, you know, it starts to resonate. You start to say, wow, it's so much more satisfying to represent someone that you can get some measure of help or relief to them. You know, it's just satisfying. It's more morally and satisfying than the intellectual thrill of having done a great job as an advocate and gotten a multi-billion-dollar multinational corporation off the hook, whether they deserve it or not. You know, it's just not that satisfying, you know.
Wow.
I'll put it that way.
You're good at what you do, but just to hear you speak about this individual that was burned and lost, it's something no fault of their own. That has to sit. That has to sit in a place where, you know, walking in another person's shoes, that empathy aspect of that. So, you know,
I think as you go on in life, you know, you see more tragedies. You experience tragedies in your own life. You see, you know, your parents die. You know, maybe you have a sibling die, or you know, a loved one, a friend, or, you know, spouse or child, God forbid. But you start to realize as you go through life, in a manner that not every teenager or 20-year-old realizes, how much of an impact that has on a person.
Yeah. Which leads me to Mike. Is there one client that you'll never forget?
There's a few, yeah, on both sides. There's a few. I definitely have a top 5 for sure. But would be hard for me to pick out one, but there's been. You want me to tell you one?
Sure, share one.
It's a little girl. She was 9 years old, and she had swine flu. And she was neglected by a pediatrician. And her mother kept bringing her back. She was getting worse and worse. She took her to the emergency room. They saw her and discharged her. They didn't give her the medication. The last time she saw her pediatrician, you know those blood saturation things they put you on your finger?
Yes.
You know? Okay. So if it's 90, or if normal is like 97, 98, 100, you know, in the high 90s. If it's above 90, it's not concerning. But if it's below 90, it is. This little girl was in the 70s.
Oh.
She was like having enormous trouble breathing. You know, and the pediatrician turned her out and told her to go to the emergency room, didn't even call a taxi. She should have been taken there in an ambulance with oxygen and stuff, you know. The little girl died like 24 hours later. Her mother, you know, I mean, you don't get over something like that. I'd say if I had to pick one, and you know what? They fought that case bitterly all the way to trial and to verdict, you know.
Did you represent the little girl?
$8 million verdict against them. But again, with the caps, it's, was reduced to 500,
Wow.
I mean, is that right? Is that justice? And, I mean,
Not at all, man.
I think that's terrible,
Wow.
I can't. But that little girl, I never met her, of course. By the time her mother reached me, she had been gone for many months, but
Hmm.
I got to know her.
Yeah, man, that's wow. Um, After all this time being in, what keeps you motivated? What keeps you driving towards this? You said you talked about being burnt out on the personal injury or what you were doing with Exxon and working with those firms. What keeps you going in medical malpractice?
Well, a couple things. First of all, I'm lucky enough I practice with my daughter, um, and so that's been a blessing.
Wow.
That's been something, and hopefully she'll carry this on when I retire. Um, I think it's immense satisfaction when we can help someone that's been through something like this, some tragedy, some life altering catastrophic injury and tragedy like this. It's definitely it's definitely a wonderful feeling. I think that's a big motivator. The people I work with, I mean, we're a team. We're a boutique law firm. There's only 6 of us, and I love the people I work with. I mean, I'm getting up there in age now. I may not look it, but
Hey man, you look. Hey, hey, you look amazing. I was looking through your photos and stuff. It was like looking at. I hope you don't mind this comparison, but it was like looking at what's the guy that used to be on Hawaii 5-0 with the cool hair?
yeah, I know who you're talking about.
You know what I'm talking about?
Jim Lord or something was his name.
Yeah, man. I was like, you got Hollywood looks, man, and
Well, thank you very much.
strong jaw, So yeah, good Lord has been His grace and mercy upon you, I'm sure.
He has, and I am grateful for it. I've been blessed with good health, and fortunately, haven't been had to go to the hospital and so forth. But yeah, it's grinding. It is tiring. It's fatiguing to do it right, And I feel like I'm at kind of the peak of my powers, if you will. I mean, all those lessons I've learned along the way, I can employ, and we're pretty successful at this. It's a difficult field, and it's
Yeah,
hard for people to find medical malpractice lawyers in this state, and now you know why.
yeah,
Uh, and so, I feel like if I know I got to hang it up, sooner or later. In my case, pretty soon. But I feel like I should do what I can, for as long as I can, um, and then I got to go.
yeah. No. With that said, you talked about your daughter taking on the practice. You taught trial advocacy at a law school with students and stuff. Why is investing in the next generation important to you?
Well, I mean, I have grandchildren, and hopefully, we'll have great grandchildren after that. I mean, I teach medical malpractice at a local law school here in New Orleans, and I have taught trial advocacy over the years for various organizations and so forth. Yeah, I mean, they're carrying the torch. I mean, this is not an end. There's no end to this. It's not going to ever go away. It'll always be there. And I mean, children and young people are our future. I mean, that's the future of everything. And I want to pass the torch, and and it's very important to me. And I don't know if one of my grandsons will ever do this. I don't know, but it's real important to me that young people. And when I teach the course at the law school, there's a lot of gasps, kind of like what your reaction was earlier. Oh my God, you're kidding. What? 500,000? That's nothing, you know? Um,
Yeah.
so I hope that in, you know, the younger generation, just like in everything in our society today, I mean, they gotta step up and they gotta change things because the way it is now is not good enough.
With that said, what's one habit that every young lawyer should develop immediately, in your opinion?
Um, Relentless striving for excellence. Do not satisfy yourself with being good. Okay.
Mm.
Go for it.
Not
Go
satisfy
for it.
yourself with being good.
No, go
You have to
for
say that one again. Say that again.
relentless striving for excellence. Know the law, know your facts, know the evidence, prepare. Preparation is 90% of this. You know, I've been in 100 and some odd trials. Preparation, preparation, preparation. You don't be satisfied with good. You go for it. Go for it all.
Mm. You've been a successful trial lawyer, uh, getting those big verdicts. What advice would you give attorneys who are technically good but struggle to connect with juries? Because you've seen what I like about you is how you take us to the story. I mean, that's even more important than what's happened, because the stories that you're able to tell, and you got to write your next one. You got to write a book, film something about where you are, man, because you've seen so many things over the decades, and it's really enlightening, really is inspiring.
Well, I would say to the person who's struggling, luckily, this can be learned. You can learn it. You can. And you don't have to be Jerry Spence or, Johnny Cochran, with a magnetic personality and so forth. You prepare and you learn how to do this, and you can be effective. You know, whether you think you're a sparkling personality or Hollywood
Mm,
or not, you can win. You can learn this, and you can be good at it, and you
right.
can be excellent at it, and you can do it too.
Okay. So this next section I call rapid fire. So I'm just going to fire off some questions that you
All
answer.
right.
All right. Biggest courtroom myth.
Biggest courtroom myth is that it runs like a Swiss watch. 2 + 2 = 4 every time. It
Okay.
doesn't.
Okay. Coffee or bourbon?
Coffee for me.
Okay. First trial you ever won?
It was a personal injury case involving an accident offshore.
Okay. One book every lawyer should read.
You know, the title of it, I'm not quite sure. It's by Jerry Spence. It's something about winning trials. I couldn't tell you the title of it offhand, but look it up on the internet. Jerry Spence. He's
I thought
great.
you was gonna say To Kill a Mockingbird.
Well, for inspiration, that's as good as anything.
Okay. No, I just remembered you said that
Yes.
Killing Mockingbirds was got you into it. One word that defines a great lawyer.
Preparation.
Ooh, like that. One case that changed your life.
The case in which I was talking to you about, in which my associate came and told me about his aunt that had a bad outcome, and I took it and amazingly got a good result.
Oh, very nice. So I told you, I was talking before the show, I told you I come up with acronyms. So I call it the Loudr acronym. Okay, the Loudr Lawyer acronym. So for you, CHIP, I came up with C, conviction, standing firm for clients when the odds seem impossible. Honor, H was honor, building a reputation that outlasts beyond the verdict. I, the integrity, doing what's right, especially when no one is watching. And in P, perseverance, continuing to fight through decades of difficult cases with the same passion.
Well, I'm flattered. I'm honored that you did that. That's really something. Thank you very much.
Oh man, thank you for being. You're doing what God intends it for us to do. Being a service to people, trying to do the good thing the best you can with what you're given, and having that integrity, I think is really important. And the fact that you are aware of you were on the other side defending big companies and your heart being changed. That doesn't happen by yourself. That's something that happens when God changes your outlook on how you look at something. And that's a beautiful thing, man. So I admire that.
Thank you.
If a young lawyer was to walk into your office today, you talk about your daughter, you're hoping she carries on. We'll say your daughter. What advice would you give her, or have you given her today, since looking at where you are now, that you didn't know then? So it's a chance to tell your younger self. What would you tell her now that you now know that you didn't then?
To last over the long haul, you really have to love this to do it, for this, to do it over the long haul. Unfortunately, many of my brothers and sisters that I graduated from law school became alcoholics. Drugs got into it. They just burned out. They never learned to really handle the stress and the preparation that went with it, and they handled it the wrong way. You gotta kind of develop a way of handling the responsibility and the stress, if you're going to last over the long haul, and to give you the motivation to do that, you really need to love the law. You need to love the practice. If you don't, you're probably not going to be a very happy person, and God forbid you handle it the wrong way and you end up like some of my friends did that didn't make it.
Right. You talked about being in a very successful position in terms of on an average, cases wise. Your cases, how many cases are you bringing in a month? Your workload?
Oh, we have inquiries, probably between 6 and 8 inquiries a week.
Okay.
So maybe we have 40 or 50 inquiries a month. Of those, we'll probably, we'll screen them and so forth, and we get down to maybe 2 or 3 that we accept each month. It's a very small number, really. Is
there a reason why, out of all those inquiries, why
they're not viable? They're bad outcomes, or they are malpractice, but the damages just aren't enough given our system that we have here in Louisiana. The damages are just not enough to justify the investment of time and money, or for the client's point of view, it doesn't do much good for me to take a case that at the end of the day you get little or nothing out of it, for the client, it's not exactly a pleasant process. There's the deposition, there's the trial, and all of the rest of it. It's not pleasant.
Right.
So yeah, it's a winnowing process.
So I read something to where you also like to reach out to other attorneys in was that like personal injury attorneys, criminal attorneys, what attorneys in your field? But you reach out your hand to them in working together.
Well, as I say, I've been very active politically to get reform and change of Louisiana's harsh, draconian medical malpractice laws. And in that regard, I have a network of other attorneys who do the same thing as I do and feel the same way and are willing to invest some time and money themselves to, so that there's that. We have a list serve, that other medical malpractice lawyers are on, younger lawyers and stuff, in which they're constantly asking questions. What do I do with this? Do you have an expert who can look at that, and so on and so forth? So, I'm active on that as well. And just over the years, I mean, there's lawyers, I think that, I've met along the way. Some have retired already. Some haven't, I'm still friends with, So
Yeah.
it's a network. I generally like lawyers. I am one myself, but they tend to be very well educated, well informed, interesting people to know, So, I know people see all the ads on the billboards and on TV, and they hate commercials and they hate lawyer commercials, and it hasn't helped our image, and I get that. But, actually, we're a pretty interesting group.
No, man, you guys are. I mean, just sitting here talking to you, man, and what's important is you guys are human too, just like the doctors are human.
Yeah.
And being able to have compassion, and there's going to be tough moments. There's going to be tough moments. There's going to be painful ones. You just have to be able to walk through it. The decisions you make in those moments is defining, and you seem to have done a good job in that aspect. Which leads me to this question: when it's all done, when you've had your last case, when you've said your last case, what legacy do you want to leave with your children, with your colleagues, and those that have worked with you? What do you hope is the lasting impression that they get from you?
He tried to help as many people as he could.
Simple. That's beautiful.
That's
beautiful. That's beautiful, man.
Help as many people as he could.
Hey, that's beautiful. Well said. Look at that. Look at the humble Chip right there. Come on, man. Look at that smile. Okay.
Well, I mean, I'd be the first to admit it's a business, and I couldn't do it for free. Or I wouldn't be able to help anybody, so it is a business. But yeah, I think that'd be it.
Okay. When you hear the term Loudr Lawyer, when you see Loudr Lawyer up there, what does Loudr Lawyer mean to you? Speak
up when you see injustice, when you know something needs to get changed. Don't sit there silently, like, it's so easy to do, and so many of us do it, and it's tempting to do it. But we're in a better position than a lot of people are. We tend to be more affluent. We have more time. We have a deeper understanding of a lot of things than the average person does. And when we see stuff going on, that's wrong, do something. Do something. Get loud.
Love that. So, Chip, how do people get a hold of you? They want to. Are you only in the state of Louisiana, or are you licensed in other areas?
I'm licensed in Texas. I'm licensed in Texas as well, and I do practice a fair bit in Mississippi. But I'm licensed there. I do that with another law firm over there that we collaborate on cases, on medical malpractice cases. I have I think the easiest way, because no one will remember the numbers and so forth, is my law firm's name is Wagar Hickman. That's my daughter's last name, Hickman.
Okay.
Wagar Hickman. www.wagarhickman.com is our website. If you go on there, you'll find everything you need: phone numbers, emails, whatever. That's us. That's where we are.
All right. Hey, Chip, thank you so much for being on the Loudr Lawyer Network.
It's been my pleasure. It's been great talking with you.
Yes, sir. Much respect to you, sir. and I'll be back after this moment.
All right.
Thanks for being a part of the Loudr Lawyer Network. If you're enjoying the conversation, let us know. Give us a like and subscribe to never miss a thing. We'll see you next time right here on the Loudr Lawyer Network.